House File 1951, Conference Committee, the Omnibus Retirement Bill. The Conference Committee will come to order at 8:25 as scheduled. The
Representative Murphy,
Senator Pappas.
you forgot that to tell us this was House time, not Senate time.
No. House time was 7:55. I don't know if everyone in the room knows, but the targets were received for the House File 1951 2 days ago or so, and in fiscal year 2015, in fiscal year 2015, the amount of money that this committee was given as a target was $14,031,000. For 2016-17, the targets that the House received, or that House File 1951 received in 2016-17, 42062,000. So those are the numbers that we are working with this morning. We have been presented with substantive differences between the Senate and the House versions of the 2014 Omnibus Retirement Bill from Mr. Martin, the Executive Director. The first difference in the bills between the House and the Senate, and there were 5 major differences. All other were similarities or sames. Actually, they were sames.
They were sames.
So the first difference that we're taking up is the school employee minimum salary membership threshold. And Mr. Martin?
Members of the commission, you might remember that during the interim and then during the session, the commission talked about working on changing the threshold for when the minimum salary threshold for when individuals in local government would be obligated to become PERA members. And the decision by the commission was to, instead of doing it on a monthly basis, to do it on an annualized basis, and to do it with 2 different salary levels, one for full-time local government employees and a lower amount for school district employees who are employed for less than a full 12-month year. The House position, the House language, reflects what the Pension Commission put together in the Omnibus Pension Bill as it recommended it. PERA subsequently suggested that the language in the House language, which refers broadly to school district employees, would be clearer and better if it referred to school year employees rather than school district employees. Not all school district employees are on a 9-month calendar schedule, and the lower dollar amount was really directed towards those folks who are at a reduced year. So that's the Senate language, and PERA is here if you want to have testimony from them. They suggested that the Senate language is an updating and a refinement of what the Pension Commission did and what the House language includes.
Senator Pappas.
Do you want testimony? No. Madam Chair, I'll move the Senate position.
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is adopted. Difference 2. Mr. Martin.
Madam Chair, this relates to the dollar amount of the new state aid that would be payable to TRA with respect to the Duluth consolidation that's in the bill. Article 6 of the bill provides for a consolidation of the Duluth Teachers Plan into the statewide TRA plan if that consolidation is approved by the Duluth Board of Trustees, the membership of the Duluth Teachers Pension Fund, and the TRA Board. The dollar amount of the new aid is and the timing were differences in the bill. The House provision differed from what the Pension Commission recommended. The Pension Commission recommended an increase in Duluth aid from the $346,000 that it currently receives up to $14,377,000, a $14,031,000 increase in the aid, which is the target, the budget target that the conference committee has been given. The House went to a somewhat larger amount, a $15 million increase, and provided that money would be paid not following the approval of the consolidation in calendar year 2015, but would be paid in the 2015 fiscal year, in other words, October of 2014. So the question here in difference 2 is the dollar amount and when it's paid. The Senate went for the and kept the same amount as recommended by the Pension Commission, an increase of $14.031 million, but made it payable in fiscal year 2017 as its first payment. So you have here a choice of if you're going to concur with the budget target and increase the Duluth teacher aid from $346,000 by the $14.031 million or some other amount, and then when you're going to start the aid.
Madam Chair,
Representative Nelson.
I'll move the House position with the new number, which is the $14,377 million.
Madam Chair?
Senator Pappas.
Madam Chair, I'll support that motion, but I just want to clarify that we're adding in 2015 14.031 on top of the 346 aid. This is just Duluth, right? And then in the tails, it would be 14.031 and 14.031 on top of the 346 in aid. And then the first aid payment would be from the House October 1st, 2014.
Yes.
Just clarifying that's his motion. All right.
That's my intent.
Representative Khan.
Again, one of the reasons why I support this, even though it is a cost, is that these problems in municipal pension plans probably really go back to state bad laws and state laws that were incomplete at best. And I know, going back, I know we've done bailouts of various Minneapolis plans, of Murph and Minneapolis teachers and so forth. Probably, I'm sure, I can never remember numbers well enough, but probably much more than this. And, I think we really don't want public employees and past public employees to suffer from bad judgments that the legislature made in the past. So.
Madam Chair?
Senator Pappas.
Madam Chair, Representative Khan, I believe your comments are more properly addressed to the situation with the St. Paul Pension Fund.
Yes, I
Duluth,
put them the same.
you put them together. We're doing Duluth right now really has a demographic issue. And they've been a very well-run pension fund for 100 years. They've gotten high returns. It's just by losing members to TRA and by losing pupils in their school district, they're just not able to be sustainable. And I think that this is a very good move. I know that The governor in particular has supported mergers of small funds into larger funds, and as has the Pension Commission over the years. So I would urge my conferees to support the Nelson motion.
Madam Speaker, or Madam Chair?
Madam Speaker?
Representative Nelson.
That's kind of fun.
And I agree with that, but Representative Kahn's statements that the demographic problems that were happening in Duluth were caused by actions taken by the legislature that added to the problem with their demographic.
Oh, good point.
And so
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that's on the record, that I don't look at this as a bailout, as was said. I look at it more as fixing problems we caused and making sure these funds go forward. Because in the future, if these funds were to
Right.
go out of existence or get into trouble, the people that are now getting pensions from these plans would be back at the state having to be paying money to keep these people in nursing homes and that, because we have to pick up that cost instead of them picking it up through their pension.
Thank you very much. Mr. Martin, one more time, will you reassure us of the numbers that we're going to be using in the decision on difference 2?
Okay, members, if you accept the Nelson motion, in fiscal year 2015, this would be the October 1st, 2014 payment to TRA on behalf of Duluth, there would be a $14.031 million increase in the aid paid to TRA for Duluth. And then in the subsequent biennium, fiscal years 2016 and 2017, that $14.031 million would also be payable.
With the current aid,
Yes, it would be on top of the 346, that's the current Duluth teacher aid.
Madam Chair.
Senator Pappas.
Madam Chair, Mr. Martin, and that $346,000 is being transferred to TRA?
Yes. If you accept the Nelson motion, yes.
Anyone else? Okay. All in favor of the Nelson motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is adopted. Difference 3, Mr. Martin.
Members, difference 3 relates to effective dates for the Duluth to teacher consolidation. It really has to do with the issue you just resolved, which is the dollar amount and what to do with the existing Duluth teacher aid and the folding of the two amounts together. In order, when the House advanced the aid amount to payable in the 2014 calendar year, there had to be a change in the effective dates to make sure that we didn't pay the 346 for Duluth twice in 2014. And that's the extra effective date change that's in the House language. And that would be appropriate, given the Nelson motion, to not pay TRA the $346,000 in 2014 and pay Duluth teachers the $346,000 in 2014 also. Because we're moving that $346,000 from Chapter 354A, which is the First Class City Teacher Law, to Chapter 354, which is the TRA law. And the effective dates in the consolidation are largely in 2015, after the consolidation would be approved by Duluth teachers and by TRA. That would be, if that delayed effective date for these collateral changes doesn't occur in the House timing, you're going to end up with two aid payments and an extra cost of $346,000 to the state. So the House position would be the most consistent with the Nelson motion.
Madam Chair,
Representative Nelson.
I'll move the House position for the difference number 3.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the Nelson motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is adopted.
Madam Chair, difference 4 has to do with the St. Paul teachers. This is Article 7 of the bill. The, both the House and the Senate do agree as to the dollar amount of the new aid for, or the additional aid for St. Paul teachers at $7 million. The question here is really the timing. The House version of the bill makes it effective first payment of the additional aid of $7 million, October 1 of 2014. The Senate position is that the new aid, the initial payment of the $7 million new aid would be in October 1 of 2016. If the committee wishes to comply with the budget targets, you would really be splitting the difference as to timing. In October 1 of 15 would be the year for the initial payment. That would make the target, as I understand it, for the tails is $42,062. So that would be the two $14.031 million payments to Duluth plus two $7 million payments to St. Paul teachers for the 16-17 biennium. So that would mean that you would, if you want to comply with that, the payment in 2015, which would be during the 2016 fiscal year, would be appropriate.
Madam Chair.
Senator Pappas.
So that means basically, St. Paul's already receiving the $7 million in aid in the current biennium, so this would be adding it to the tails.
Yes.
Correct.
Senator, the 2013 legislature created an additional aid payment for both Duluth and for TRA for 2 years only, and St. Paul and Duluth still are going to be receiving those amounts. So the $7 million will be paid in 14 to St. Paul under the 13 law, and so to not have a break in that aid, if you start it in payable in calendar year 15, fiscal year 16, that would be a continuous payment and would be consistent with the budget target.
So, Madam Chair.
Senator Pappas.
So, Madam Chair, Representative Khan, now you can make your speech about state mistakes, state decisions that affected pension funds. Madam Chair, I would move the Senate position with the change of the date for the initial payment of aid to October 1st, 2015. And just since I praised Duluth, I have to praise my other child. St. Paul also had a very well-run pension fund. The returns have been as high, if not higher, than the State Board of Investment. It's been very well managed. The reality here is state decisions that allow the school district to suspend payments for quite a long period of time, which then affected the core of the fund, and there wasn't enough money there, therefore, to make the high interests that they were attaining. And so they've never been or reached near full funding, but under this plan, but with continuing state aid, down the road, I think 27 years, it's projected that they will reach full funding.
Representative Khan.
Just to prove to people that I am capable of changing my mind every once in a while. I started in this fully believing that we should have absolutely one pension fund, that everyone should be in it. At some point, I kind of sort of like the idea of having some parts of individual pension funds, because you can look at different management styles and you can look at different things that are going. The thing that's irritated me the most, and that's slowly moving into place voluntarily, was our number of separate volunteer fire funds, and of which most of the bad decisions that they made was because they were moving into what local people wanted to do. For example, putting all their funds in cash in local banks. And the year I was going to make a really big fight about it was the year that the stock market just went totally belly up, and so all these volunteer fire funds looked like financial geniuses because they had their money in cash in their local bank. And so, but then recently they every once in a while I get a report of how many more have joined the basic plan. But the idea that one big plan does really better than lots of small plans is still kind of a good idea. Although being able to look at some differences is also a good idea. Anyway, it's irrelevant to this thing that we're voting on.
I renew my motion.
I have a question. Mr. Martin, would you please explain again the date that goes with the budget target?
Madam Chair, we need to make the St. Paul teacher payment effective for fiscal year 2015. So that would be, for 2016. So that the payment will be made in October 1st of 2015. So as long as it's effective, the language in the two bills, the House had September 30th, 2014, that's the day before the payment would be made. The Senate has September 30th, 2016. My suggestion would be to make that September 30th, 2015.
With the payment on October 1st, 2015.
And state law, if you look at the provision, it provides for the payment to be made October 1st every year of whatever amount is specified in that section of statute. So this would make it effective the day before the payment, so it would drive the increased payment on October 1, 2015.
Can we look at the corresponding page?
Sure, this would be page R92 of the side-by-side. You're looking at the top half of page R92, and the first bold effective date that you see, that's the effective date of these two provisions.
Well, let's look at the Senate language.
Okay, the Senate language is on the right-hand side of the page. It would be line 80.3 in this case, and this section is effective September 30, 2016 is what the Senate provision is.
Yeah.
That's a year late, or that omits 1 year of the fiscal year tails if you were to do 2016. The motion, as I understand it, would be to change that to 2015, and that would drive an October 1, 2015 payment. You look up on line 79.32, that's where it specifies that the aid is payable on October 1st. The new aid amount is in line 7930 and 7931.
Mr. Lundin and Ms. Roberts, is that consistent with the target that I received, that we received?
Yes.
Okay. Senator Pappas renews their motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion is adopted.
Then, members, the fifth substantive difference between the two bills has to do with the actuarial assumptions for post-retirement increases. The Commission, when it took up the Omnibus pension bill, recommended that the interest rate assumption be simplified, that we take the implicit post-retirement adjustment assumption out of the interest rate assumption and have a specific explicit post-retirement adjustment actuarial assumption. And the language that was suggested by the pension fund administrators was didn't quite capture what was their intent. So it was a topic that needed to be worked on after the bill left the Pension Commission. The House version of the bill cleaned up the rates, which was the problem of the language coming out of the Pension Commission. There are different rates for post-retirement adjustments. Under the 2010 pension bill, most or all of the post-retirement adjustments were reduced for a period of time until the pension plan reaches a better funded position. And the problem with the language coming out of the Pension Commission is it only reflected the lowered rates by statutory cross-reference and never picked up the larger rates. So that was corrected in the House version of the bill. The Senate version of the bill, we added 3 additional items. The language as it came out of the Pension Commission and as the House dealt with it did not specifically provide for what actuarial assumptions would be used in making this estimate. The actuary is delegated the task of trying to estimate when the pension plan will be sufficiently well-funded to have the larger post-retirement adjustment rates be payable and to reflect that new liability in the actuarial work. So the Senate language specifies that the same actuarial assumptions that are used for the actuarial valuation have to be used for the estimate of when the plan is going to be better funded, that the contribution stabilization procedure that's in state law for the various pension plans has to be built into that estimate. And if the period of time that the actuary estimates the plan will be sufficiently better funded to drive the new post-retirement increase rates, if that date exceeds the amortization target date for the pension plan, that the actuary has to show their work, has to give us a breakout of what that estimate looks like. And all this would be for the 2015 actuarial valuations. So it's somewhat more detail, less discretion given to the actuary and more clarity in actuarial assumptions, whether the contribution rate stabilization procedure will be implemented, and the actuary would be required to show their work.
Madam Chair, could we hear from the plan directors on the differences here?
When at our if I recall, Senator Pappas, our last Pension Commission meeting, when this topic came up, the House language was acceptable because they were going to do some additional work during the interim before it was necessary to have language, and before the commission was meeting in the new year. And so please give us advice. When we passed the bill on the floor, the House passed the bill on the floor, we thought that the language was just fine, with the understanding that you were going to do some more work over the summer.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Bergstrom.
Yep, my name is Dave Bergstrom, the Director of the Minnesota State Retirement System. My understanding is that the concept approved by the Pension Commission is the House language. The pension plans support the House language in this regard. In 2006, MSRS put in a provision that triggered contribution rate increases. In isolation, that made total sense. In 2010, we put in triggers to adjust cost of living adjustment, which in isolation makes total sense. What our board is wrestling with is how those two interplay. So we have the needs of employees who don't want to necessarily pay more, and you have retirees who would like to see a higher cost of living adjustment. What we asked for in the Pension Commission is a little more time to continue with the practice that the actuary has been using, so we can figure out that balance of meeting the needs of both employees and retires. And we think the House language is appropriate in this case. And we think it's what was agreed to in concept at the Pension Commission.
Ms. Hacking?
I did Laurie Hacking with TRA, I agree with what Mr. Bergstrom said. The House language is preferable and is fitting with what you approved at the Pension Commission in a conceptual way. The Senate language goes beyond what you had approved.
Anything else, Ms. Vanek? Okay. Senator Pappas?
Well, Madam Chair, I did want the directors to articulate, though, the discussion about looking further into this over the interim for the summer. What's your plans in that regard?
Madam Chair, our board has actually started talking about this as far as we need to do some actuarial work to find out, what's the contribution rate sort of maximum, what should be first? Should we increase the COLA or continue to increase contributions, and how does that balance? So we need to do some actuarial work to determine that. And then from that, we hope to come back next year with some clarification as to a way to resolve that. So for example, this year in this bill, MSRS board approved contribution rate increase. Now, at the same token, we're going to be right about 90% funded. So, will we trigger the higher cost of living adjustment or not? We don't know at that point. So those are the things that our board plans to look at. We've spent quite a bit of time looking at that. But there's only so much pain employees and employers can take as far as contribution rates go. We have retirees that we have to balance their needs and their legal needs, and it's really sort of a big discussion that our board is having, and it's not an easy one. And quite frankly, there's not a perfect answer.
And Madam Chair, and the intention of the other funds?
Laurie Hacking with TRA. Our intention is the same. We're not as well funded as MSRS, so our trigger date of a possible trigger date of a higher COLA is much farther out in the future. But we plan to work cooperatively with MSRS so that hopefully whatever change is brought forward or suggested, that all three systems could be consistent. That would be the objective.
Madam Chair, Senator Pappas, PERA likewise will be looking at it. Our general plan has the contribution stabilizer. Our other plans do not. All our plans have triggers on the COLA. Our police and fire plan also has a trigger for state aid. So the board is going to be looking at all triggers and trying to reconcile how to approach this going forward and what recommendation to make to the Pension Commission to make sure that it's clear in the future.
Mr. Martin, are you available to work together at all on this concept this summer?
Certainly, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, he has another year before he retires, so we have to put him to work.
Senator Pappas, do you want to consider a time certain? Or Ms. Bergstrom, directors, would you like to consider a time certain for when we could expect a little report? Or a report?
Madam Chair, I would expect January of next year, of 2015.
Would that be okay?
Yeah, I don't think we have to put it in.
Representative Nelson?
I'll move the deference number 5, the House position.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is adopted.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Martin, I have, you shared with me a document 1951-288. I understand, Mr. Stoffel, let's wait till everybody has it.
Madam Chair, maybe I can give you some background to tell you where this is in the bill, what it relates to, and then TRA can tell us what the problem is that they're trying to address. This amends a portion of the Duluth Teacher Consolidation Law. The Duluth Teacher Consolidation Law provides that some money is going to be transferred prior to the consolidation date from the Duluth Teachers Plan to the State Board of Investment. And this has to do with something that relates to the State Board and that money transfer.
Mr. Stoffel.
Madam Chair and members, my name is Jay Stoffel. I'm the Deputy Director of the Teachers Retirement Association. And I would point out that as soon as the bill passes, maybe as early as the end of May, certainly early June, we will begin implementation of this merger of the Duluth plan into the TRA. So as we begin to make our plans for those administrative steps to put into effect this merger, we've been reading the bill very carefully, and I apologize for not catching this a little bit earlier in the process, but we did identify an error. I'm looking at page R88 of the side-by-side, and there are some very detailed steps laid out on when the asset transfer from the Duluth Retirement Fund, the investment portfolio, will transfer to the State Board of Investment. That transfer is due to happen no later than December 31st, 2014. The final merger date is June 30th, 2015. So we're actually doing this merger in stages. The asset transfer is the very first thing that will happen. That happens, as I said, no later than December 31, 2014. So I'm looking at I guess I'll just pick the House language on line 76.8. There's a problem with the implementation of the steps that are laid out to affect this asset transfer. The Duluth director is required to report to the State Board of Investment provide a list of the assets that are to be transferred. 30 days later, the State Board of Investment is required to designate what's acceptable to be transferred and what's not acceptable. There are some things that the State Board really can't manage, and they want to identify those issues. So the 30-day starts and finishes at certain points in time, and the problem is on line 76.8. It says within 30 days of the date on which the asset transfer occurred. Well, that's the problem. The assets haven't occurred yet. That's still not going to happen for a number of weeks. What we want to count from is 30 days from receipt of the list of assets that are intended to be transferred. And that's the purpose for the amendment. It's just getting the counting of the 30 days in the right order. It's really kind of a technical correction if you want to look at it that way.
Madam Chair,
Senator Pappas.
I move the 28A amendment.
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion is adopted. Mr. Martin, are there any other amendments that anyone's brought to you?
Madam Chair, no.
Okay. That concludes the differences in the bills. Is there anyone that's in the audience that wishes to make a statement about the positions that have been voted on, any of the positions that have been voted on in the conference committee in the 5 differences? If not, Representative Khan.
I would then move that we adopt all the positions where the two bills are the same.
The similarities or the sames in the bill are Article 2, Article 3, Article 4, Article 5, Article 8, Article 9, Article 11, Article 12, Article 13, Article 14. Representative Khan moves that those articles that are the same be adopted. Is there any discussion? I'm going to vote no. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 I do not hear three voices on either side, on both sides. The motion is not adopted. I move that the Conference Committee on House File 1951 agree on all provisions in the Senate and House versions of the bill that are identical, except for Article 14, Section 3. Representative Khan.
Well, I strongly object to this. We are reacting to political pressure, and we're acting to pressure from places of people who I don't think have a very strong understanding of pension policy. One of the things, I think I was probably the only member of the Pension Commission, except of course for staff, in the years that we adopted the basic principles of the Pension Commission. That was the thing that I recall former legislator Richard Jefferson was chair of the Pension Commission at that time, and we worked an entire summer on it. And I know that as we've gone through pension bills, every once in a while, we continually refer back to the principles of the Pension Commission. And I think the most helpful thing we've been in having a uniform pension policy has been where any item is covered by the pension, by the principles. And we've had a very strong principle on when we give prior service credit. And the principles say that purchases of public pension plan credit for periods of private service shall be permitted only if, on a case-by-case basis, so there really is no objection to looking at any particular case, it is determined there are four principles. The years of service were connected to public employment. There's a significant connection to Minnesota. The purchase payment must be actuarial equivalent to the liability incurred by the plan, and there be no subsidy from the pension plan. And the purchase must not violate notions of equity. I mean, my memory isn't good enough to know all of the times that we've done this, but I just know that they've consistently done it. And I also remember the times that we've refused it. We've sometimes gone through this whole exercise, and then the person who wants to make, and one of the principles that we've done is that sometimes these occur because of a mistake by the locality. And in those cases, we've insisted we don't do it unless the locality pays for it. And I remember specifically the times that we haven't done it is because someone looked at the cost and decided that it wasn't worth it. In this case that we're trying to eliminate, the person has looked at the cost and decided that it's worth it. There's no negative to the pension plan. There's by not doing this, I think that the precedent that we're setting is that we discard the principles when some person that we consider of higher authority than us says that we should discard them. And I just think it's a very bad direction for the Pension Commission to go. So I'm voting no on this amendment. I think maybe we should think about it and do our final bill at some time when we've had more chance to think about it.
Madam Chair, Pappas.
Madam Chair, I was really thinking about this after last night I talked to the governor's office, and they made his position clear, which I think has been in the paper, that he did not support allowing Mr. Johnson to join the defined benefit plan. And I was thinking about it that Mr. Johnson really is a poster child for defined benefit plans. We should use them in a marketing campaign because he does comply with our principles, but also making the decision that a defined benefit plan is better than the private marketplace and a private annuity. I think the private marketplace is touted as the be-all and end-all, and we've had debates over defined contribution and defined benefit plans, but here we have someone who has done the calculation, and we have really the best of both worlds. We have a situation where he's going to pay the full actuarial value, and it will be of better benefit to him because defined benefit plans are superior. And instead of, we should all stand up more, instead of allowing them to be denigrated, they really are a better plan for our employees, both public and private. Unfortunately, the private sector market does not have access to defined benefit plans anymore. They've been largely phased out. So I think it's very unfortunate that we can't include Mr. Johnson in the defined benefit plan. I think that the bill is too important and too large to risk possible negative reactions from the executive branch. And the governor's not been shy now in the final days in making his positions clear in a number of issues. So as we jokingly said, this is the mandatory sprinkler of the pension bill.
Representative Khan.
Has the governor threatened a veto of the pension bill on this issue?
I frankly asked them not to use the veto word. I think it just sets off legislators, makes us more upset. But they have strongly recommended it, and I'm sure if I push them, and I'm happy to call right now and text Matt Mossman, that would probably be the case. Remember, the governor, I've also heard potential threats on line item vetoes. The governor thinks that the merger costs are too expensive. He thinks that St. Paul should merge. He has a lot of concerns about this bill, and I frankly don't want to give him one more thing to be concerned about.
Senator Hayden.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm one of the newest members to the Pension Commission. I haven't had a lot to say throughout the year because I've been really listening. I know I'm still surprised some of you that know me, but I've really been listening and trying to understand how this process works. And in the process, I got this bill with Representative Khan, and as Representative Khan has really outlined, this commission has really been principled in the way that they go about their business. You guys spend a tremendous amount of time in the interim and others, listening to Mr. Martin and others, really talking about kind of how we go about this business to try to find as much equity as possible. And so in this particular instance, understanding Commissioner Johnson's situation in that he served for over 36 years on the county board and 4 years in the U.S. Army prior to that. I mean, he spent 40 years of his career in public service, which is one of the key principles. So for me, with all due respect to the governor and the governor's office and maybe the not-so-veiled threats of taking down the whole bill, I just find that, along with Representative Khan, and even Senator Pappas, just really unfortunate that he would be isolated to say that we would not do all of the great work that's in this bill because Commissioner Johnson has decided and has looked and has asked us to be included. And mind you, he's paying his full actuarial value and has done all the things that we said that one might do and met all the conditions of that. And so it just feels a little isolated and if I may say, a little personal to do that. As many of you know, Commissioner Johnson serves has been in the Republican Party. I've never been a member of the Republican Party, so it's not something that we do because it's a crony kind of situation. It's based on these principles. So I'm just really disappointed that we would have done all of this work and he's met the criteria to do this, and that we would then decide not to to move this forward because the governor somehow has decided that this in particular is something that he can't support, and with that, it sounds like he may veto the whole bill. I think that that's just a disservice to the state, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but I'm not sure if I can support this, though there are so many important things. So I'm very torn about this. I'm not sure I was ready to go as far as Representative Khan and not vote for the bill because of this, but I do have to put on the record that I'm extremely disappointed.
Madam Chair.
Representative Hayden, I have been in contact, or the governor's office has been in contact with me every day for about a week and a half or so. But I've never felt threatened. I've just been strongly urged. And I think there is a difference.
Well,
I don't think that I've ever felt that the bill was going to go down either, if that provision that you're speaking about is in. But I think we should be prudent in our decision-making. Senator Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be the first to admit that I am far from an expert on pensions, to say the least. During my short time here in the legislature, one of the newer members here on the conference committee, I have served on several conference committees. I've had that opportunity, and I don't remember a time in a conference committee where we have not adopted same language from when the House and the Senate have had same or similar language. In this case, from what I'm looking at, it's identical language, and I would express my disappointment if we do not adopt this language. I do not know the commissioner. I met him briefly last week in the hallway just for 2 minutes, so this is certainly nothing personal. But I do strongly urge you, Madam Chair, and members to reconsider. I will be voting no on the motion, and it's a little disappointing that both the House and the Senate have identical language, and now we would be removing that language.
Madam Chair.
Representative Khan.
Another principle that we seem to be violating at this is maybe more of a principle that's probably violated more than it's adhered to. But we don't like to operate in secret. We like to operate in open transparency. And I would suggest that we adjourn this conference committee and ask the governor or his representative to come and tell us why they feel so strongly about this position. I would just, and make them speak to we should ask former legislator Richard Jefferson to come testify on this. No.
He testified to me. We will not take proxy.
So I think the point is I really don't like to see things that, as Senator Miller pointed out, are so much in violation of what we usually do done in secret. And I don't understand why we can't have something that you found very convincing. I understand the governor has many more important things to do, but at least someone from his staff, I think, ought to come before the Pension Commission and tell us why this issue is so important.
Senator Johnson.
Madam Chair, I think Representative Khan's suggestion is a good one. I think that I tried to call I stopped in at the governor's office on the way over here, and there was no one there to speak to. But I did call Way, and I don't remember her last name, asked her about it. And she told me that the governor was not happy with this provision. And I said, well, he never talked to me about it, so I didn't know that until I was informed by Senator Pappas. But I think looking at these purchases of prior service credit, and I guess if staff, if you could tell us that the action that we took violates or doesn't fit in with our principle, number 10, purchases of prior service credit. Is there anything in that action that would go against or would be opposed to what our principles are?
Mr. Martin?
Madam Chair, the two points in the particular prior service credit principle that tend to raise questions is, one, the full actuarial value, which is not a question here. The other is, are there any adverse equitable considerations that need to be taken into contemplation? And as far as the trying to think of what would be an adverse equitable consideration, the Commissioner did have numerous opportunities to elect PERA coverage every time he was reelected. When he was first elected and every time he subsequently reelected, he could have chosen PERA and chose not to. How important that is as a potential adverse equitable consideration is for your judgment, but that would be the sole adverse consideration I can think of.
And Senator Johnson, I would like to remind you that we heard in testimony that the PERA board did not approve of this action.
No.
Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to share with the members of the conference committee my conversation with the governor's office, which also included that this wasn't a isolated case of someone where there had been a bureaucratic glitch or a paperwork glitch or something, and that they were fearful that there would be thousands of other elected officials who would then ask to join PERA and didn't want to kind of start a precedent in that direction.
Representative Khan.
Well, as far as the precedent, they were saying this is someone that's overpaying. PERA, I think, is 78% funded, and this is someone who's paying 100%. If we had thousands, we'd probably bring, well,
More money.
maybe more money into PERA. And, again, everyone seems to, I have not had a discussion with the governor's office on this. Somehow I have the feeling of being avoided. But I just think one of the principles that we've had, and that changed from when and I'm the only one who was elected at the time when that changed. So we decided we weren't doing things in secret meetings. I know that we do lots of stuff in private conversations, and we obviously can't stop that. But I think everyone who has cited this has just cited strong objections from the governor's office, and I think, obviously not the governor, I'm not making that unreasonable demand, but I think is there someone from the governor's office here now who can testify to what the reasons are for this objection? The thousands makes no sense. Because that would be only helpful to PERA. So,
Senator Johnson.
Madam Chair and Mr. Martin, I had wanted to follow up a little bit because I talked with you earlier before the meeting, and I think you told me that in 2008, that before 2008, this sort of request would be taken into consideration and likely agreed to. Is that correct? Did I interpret your statement?
Mr. Martin.
Madam Chair, I'm not, we talked about a number of things. I'm not, the 2008 date doesn't ring a bell. There were changes in PERA law that occurred around 2001, which eliminated the option of local elected officials being covered by PERA General. So there is an end date for when Commissioner Johnson could have exercised that option. But the point I was trying to raise when I suggested this was an equitable consideration is self-help remedies. If someone did not avail themselves of a self-help remedy, that has sometimes been viewed by the Commission as an adverse consideration. And I'm just raising that as the only thing I can contemplate here in what I understand of the
And
Senator
situation.
Johnson.
Madam Chair and Mr. Martin, I'm certainly not trying to put you on the spot, but we were talking a little bit about legislators. Can legislators come back into the plan?
Senator, Madam Chair, Senator, what we were talking about is the unclassified plan, which is really legislative staff, state officials, state elected official staff, State Board of Investment, upper-level commissioners, deputies, who are in the unclassified plan, can do what essentially Commissioner Johnson is doing here, where an individual can be covered by the defined contribution plan for their entire career, and then choose to take an MSRS general benefits. I've been covered by the defined contribution portion of the unclassified plan for my whole career here, and likely would convert that to an MSRS general benefit when I do retire, depending upon how the mathematics work out. So we have a precedent for individuals being able to, in effect, take the lump sum of their accumulated individual account and translate that into a defined benefit plan at career end. So that's not unprecedented. It doesn't happen in PERA. The PERA defined contribution plan does not include a similar provision.
And Madam Chair?
Senator Pappas.
And Mr. Martin, legislators cannot do that.
It was specifically, Madam Chair, Senator, it was specifically not extended to legislators. And the Commission has considered that on a couple of occasions in the past, and one bill was introduced on that topic again this year, but was not heard by the Commission. And the Commission has not been warm to that suggestion that the end of career election of a defined benefit plan by defined contribution covered legislators would occur.
Madam Chair?
Senator Pappas.
I just wanted to respond to something that Senator Miller said about SAMES in House and Senate. I've been in dozens and dozens of conference committees over my career, and it does occasionally happen, Senator Miller, and it usually is for this reason, is because the governor says that he has a problem, or it could be that another unknown situation arises that neither the House or Senate floors were aware of at the time that created a huge problem. It's usually not a huge issue that we would take a bill, something out of a conference committee report, but it does happen.
And it's not usually lumped with 180,000 individual and family, teacher family risk, at risk. Representative Morgan.
Well, Madam Chair, I just want to make sure I was able to get in. I raised my hand a couple of times, and somehow I didn't know if you saw me or not, but Representative Morgan, I'll defer to you.
He hasn't said it.
Representative Morgan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate Senator Pappas pointing out I was going to do the same. I served here for 4 years, and with Governor Pawlenty, I think we often deferred to the governor's judgment and made compromises with positions that both the House and the Senate shared because we work together, and that's how we get things done here. We can't get things done if we're not working together with the executive branch. Madam Chair, I have not spoken to the governor's staff about this issue. You indicated that you had. If we were to delay the proceedings and bring a member or ask a member of his staff to come down and answer our questions on this, do you have any feeling about our ability to convince the governor's staff or the governor that our principled decision, and I agree that we've made a decision consistent with principles when we adopted this initially. Do you have any reason to believe that we could be successful in convincing in the next couple of days, which is about all we have left, that our decision based on our principles is the one that the governor should follow? Madam Chair.
I think that there's a separation between the legislative branch and the executive branch. And I think that we probably could ask, but I think they probably might not come. But I think we should all talk, that wants to talk about this.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair?
Representative Hayden.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And, I just want to say that I haven't talked directly to the governor's office about this issue, though I've talked to them frequently about a number of other issues. So I don't know if those other issues just had a higher priority than the other issues that I've been talking to them about consistently over the week. I have had some interaction with them through this meeting, and wanted to be sure that since I didn't talk to them directly, and to be respectful to the chair and Senator Pappas, that I don't think the governor is saying that he would veto it, but he strongly objects to it, and I just want to make sure that I'm not misrepresenting their position since I haven't talked to them directly. But I do think that somehow I'm trying to follow the conversation of the governor's office interjecting an opinion that is making us take these same positions and pulling it out, and that influences us. But then on the flip hand side, when we're asking if they might, or MMB or someone in the administration might come to talk to us directly about this, which is, not unprecedented in the other conference committees, that somehow that might not be what we want to do. So I can't figure out how we actually hear from the administration in a way that we can start to figure out why they feel so strongly opposed to this, other than to what Representative Khan is saying, is this kind of back-channeling conversations that we're having via text or via a phone call, and they're talking to some members of the conference committee and not others. And so I'm not following the logic around why we wouldn't be able to take some more time to hear from them, and for all of the members of the conference committee to kind of get a better sense of why the administration feels so strong about this issue. I think that's just a matter of process. So I just don't, now as I hear more and more and listen to the more senior members here, I'm just not quite sure that I'm ready to move forward with adopting the bill as a whole if we don't get a better sense of from the administration, who seems to have weighed in so strongly with some members, why they're pulling this provision out.
Representative Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and to Senator Hayden's point, I do think that would be helpful. I heard from Representative Morgan that this was a very principled decision. Again, I wasn't involved in that process, but it sounds like the executive branch has an opinion on this, and the Pension Commission in the House and the Senate made a principled decision. So I want to make sure that we're making decisions based on principles and not based on opinions.
Madam Chair.
Senator Pappas.
Madam Chair, I have a text message from the governor's office. If members would like to go to the governor's office to talk, they're willing to do that. Madam Chair, we only have 2 days left in session, and this is a really, really important bill, and especially for the chair and the co-chair of this committee. And thousands of teachers are depending on us making these decisions today, plus other public employees.
There are 14 articles.
Yeah, there are 14 articles. And, I regret that this is the outcome for Mr. Johnson. I suspect he'll be back. He's tried this before. And, perhaps in the next, his money stays in his defined contribution plan, and it's just a matter of trying to convince the executive branch. And, I think maybe a little bit more time needs to be spent with that. But I really feel like we should move ahead. We have to have time to adopt this conference committee on the floor. I don't know how long it will take. It was controversial in both bodies. And there's a lot of pressure to adjourn in 2 days at the latest. So I would just urge the conference committee to adopt the report, adopt Representative Murphy's motion, and move forward.
Representative Khan.
Again, the principle which I also brought up afterwards, which was changed the first year I was elected was that we don't do decisions in secret. We have decisions that are made.
Representative Conn, we're having a public meeting. What are you talking about in
I know.
secret?
Well, the problem is we're having some reason from the governor's office which has not.
This meeting is in recess.